welcome to another episode of Cosmic Rescue. I'm Cecily Saylor. I'm the founder of Typewriter Tarot, and I failed to record my intro and outro for this episode before I went on vacation. So I'm doing it from this little A-frame cabin in Terlingua, Texas, that looks out into the West Texas desert, into the mountains. I woke up to the sunrise this morning, lying right there. I can bird watch from my bed, which is something I've never done before. So thank you. Thank you, goddess. This is a really wonderful episode. I'm excited to share with you. I have a conversation with Britney Sonnenberg, who's a great friend, an amazing fiction writer, the author of Home Leave. She's also an essayist, a cartoonist, an improv performer, a tennis player, an Aries, a delightful Aries. I think you'll really enjoy our conversation, which focuses on the part of the creative process when we're trying to move what we've created out into the world. And we have to find a place to put something so that people can enjoy it. There may be other people who want to place their creative things in those places at the same time that we do. And we might have feelings of competition and wanting to push people out so that we can find our place or to do the best job compared to everyone else out there. Especially if you're an Aries, this competitive streak might come up a little bit more for you, but it's definitely something that's present for all of us when we're trying to bring our work into the world. We may not show it to everyone all the time, but some part of it does live inside of us. So we have a conversation about that, and I think you'll really enjoy exploring this question, especially with someone as humorous and wonderful as Britney. Of course, we're going to take Britney through a tarot reading, and the tarot spread that we use is one that you can and should try on your own. If you like this video, give it a like. If you like what you're seeing, subscribe to our channel. More of these episodes come out every new and full moon. So this is a great way to keep your creative practice fun, interesting, and magical and mystical. Enjoy. Hello, Britney Sonnenberg. Always a pleasure to see you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on Cosmic Rescue. Britney is a person I thoroughly adore and I've gotten to know over the past few years. Britney is a fiction writer. She's also a nonfiction writer. She writes essays. She's written a draft of a memoir. She has published a novel called Home Leave. And she is also an amazing writing teacher. She teaches in the MFA program for the University of Hong Kong. She's also an increasingly skillful tennis player, as well as an improv performer. Her talents seem to know no bounds. Welcome to the show, Britney.
Oh, thank you, Cecily.
Well, you are an Aries. I usually like to bring in people's astrology sign. And so you have that fire energy. You like to perform with your improv and your tennis. Sometimes there's like a little bit of competitive nature in you and a desire to be seen, but also, more importantly, the desire to use your physical vessel as a way to like mesmerize and enchant and entertain and prompt us all to think more deeply about life. So you always have such really cool things going on. For a while in the pandemic, you were making these amazing videos where you wore different outfits and did different personas. And your improv performances, of course, bring you into all kinds of different beings that you inhabit. Plus your writing, sometimes you're drawing. You have so many creative outlets. Can you talk a little bit about the different projects that you've really been focused on and where you are with them right now?
Yeah. Well, it's been, I think, like a real smorgasbord that can go back and forth between feeling like delectable and exciting and like the best kind of buffet or spread that you could ever want. or feeling like, why am I drawn to all these things? Why can't I pick one thing? Why do I not want to do the thing anymore that I used to be doing and that I was known for, and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, right now I'm working on a collection of essays that have sort of begun to center around the question of lessons. Because I started last year taking tennis lessons for the first time, and dance lessons, and Spanish lessons. And then I just was fascinated by adult education and like what things that we're trying to learn bring us closer to ourselves, and what's sort of like trying to step into things that either other people wanted us to be or we wish we could be, but maybe it's not quite our calling. I'm looking at you, salsa. It was fun, but it was not something that I continue to be obsessed with doing, or, well, it's also the pandemic. But yeah, anyways, as I was like learning or going to classes and trying to figure these things out, I think as a teacher, and probably there's a bunch of people who are also teachers and writers or healers in some capacity, it's so delicious to be back in the student seat. And so I wanted to also, because writing is a way for me always to understand things better, so write essays that kind of cemented the lessons for me. Or, I mean, I've thought of it too sort of as these like haphazard semesters that I created for myself, that I was like constantly writing papers for like an imaginary teacher or myself. And so that now has kind of, yeah, if you think of like, maybe with this kind of writing, one way to understand it is like a weather pattern, because it seems like very swirly, and there's kind of sofas and cats and houses and electrical poles in the mix. And it kind of feels like a tornado of thought or a hurricane or something, versus like, I don't know, something more ordered. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Cool. Yeah, before I hit record, and I was referring yet again to your Aries nature, it seems like for me as a Capricorn, like my project is to not work overly much. And for you, it's like taming that fire energy that is so generative until it's like a big ball of swirling, who knows what, and what do you do with it? So you have this draft of the memoir completed, you're working on this collection of essays, and you still have all these other, irons in the fire. So completion is always wonderful when you finish something. Of course, there's that sense of accomplishment, things finally moving forward or being born into the world. But also there's plenty more for you to tackle next. Can you talk about how you try to make those decisions, or what those questions or decisions look like for you once one of these many projects comes to an end?
Yeah, I think that is this question that I've faced over and over the entire time. Like even as a kid, when I would write something, I would want to read it to my parents, and just kind of that audience relationship. And so, and kind of maybe as the Aries thing that we were talking about before, trying to figure out like that human hunger to be seen versus the more maybe ego-driven need for approval or applause, also human. But yeah, I've been trying to kind of take my own temperature on all of that and figure out like when things are ready, what it means to have hesitation around submitting work, which I often do, even though I encourage my students to do it, and my students have found success with it. One student, Melanie Moore, has an essay coming out in the Georgia Review this month in October, so everyone should go check that out. It's a beautiful essay. But yeah, I think I'm just trying to find, sometimes it feels like my intuition is like, oh, I don't want to send that stuff out. And then trying to figure out, like, is that my intuition, or is that a like fear of failure that is something different?
Gotcha. Yeah, there's the creative process is just riddled with decisions that we have to make and commitments that we set up for ourselves. It's like, if you create the work, how then do you find a way to share it? And what does it mean to share it? And why do you want to share it? And what are you looking for? And of course, we can overthink that pretty easily. And I think, you know, knowing you a little bit, that Aries nature, that competitiveness that can come through in an Aries is great fuel for ambition and drive, but also sometimes frustrating. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for you, how it shows up for you, how it works for you, how it doesn't?
Yeah, I think it works great for me in creating things. Like, I feel like I have tons of energy, tons of curiosity, and a kind of trust that if I pose the questions and if I sit down with them, then good things will come, and that I'll find answers and new insights. I think the one thing that feels then tricky is like really wanting that to translate into some kind of success, which has been interesting too in tennis, because I go to like tennis lessons and kind of like feel a certain way in those lessons. And then I joined a league where I play games every other weekend or so. And it just often like turned into a mess, which is kind of how I feel when I send out work too. And like this question of like officialdom, or what translates as, having gotten your work out there, or like what's the kindest thing to your work and to you.
Mm-hmm. So reframing it a little bit from the like winning or the crushing it completely to like what serves the work, what winning looks like in the context of the work itself. Yeah.
I've been reading this interesting book called The Antidote that's about the negative path to happiness, or it's sort of about like different approaches that dwell with and kind of meditate on failure, instead of like just having positive imaging and stuff like that. And so that, I think, and also this Chinese notion of wei, which is like not trying, and how to like try without trying. All of those things as an Aries maybe are just like, how could you do that?
Yeah, now I'm as a Capricorn, I'm like, how can I try without trying? That sounds like, I want to unlock that puzzle. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we developed a little tarot spread to help you kind of think about your work and how it is this expansive place with many opportunities, many things in development. So you give yourself a little bit of like a project management conundrum in terms of like which thing gets attention next. And that comes from being so productive and really prolific. But then you have all of these great products that you need to decide whether they were just made for the sake of making, whether they need to go through you know, getting out into the world kind of process or something else. And so this spread would help you maybe hopefully think about some of those things. So it's a 3-card spread. And the first question was, can you show me something, dear tarot, to help me enjoy the game or to hold it all a bit more lightly? And so I like this question. That's a question I think you for sure came up with, but that idea of like, I think it's natural for you to be so creative, but then maybe a little more of the ego side or whatever it is like, how do you use this creative, all these creative outputs to kind of measure your own progress out in the world? So how to help you enjoy that process a little more or to take it all a little less seriously. Question 2, how can I harness my drive to work and do well without turning it on myself? Very, very important question. And then number 3, how can I honor my work regardless of the early outcome? And I just see in these questions, like all of the little like mental traps that we can fall into as the initial creative, blissful burst kind of wears off. And then we have to start making decisions about what that creativity looks like in the world that we inhabit. And so trying to stay connected to the fun and not just the outcome, or trying to like appreciate them both, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the cards that you pulled. And very interestingly, I thought you pulled all major arcana cards in your reading. So for a 3-card reading, this is quite rare. There are 22 major arcana cards in the whole deck versus the 56 minor arcana cards. So just the odds of pulling 3 from that smaller set is unusual, meaning there's a lot of like powerful information in the reading for you. And then your first card, show me something to help me enjoy the game and hold it all a bit more lightly. So here you got the death card reversed. And this was like, I remember us talking about this before. I kind of want to let you go first and talk about what your experience was seeing this card initially, what it means to you now.
Yeah. I mean, I remember initially just laughing at it because it seemed like this question of how to hold things more lightly, and then the most serious card, or kind of like this melodramatic death card, felt like it was like even the joke of that was light, or like the kind of literal gallows humor of seeing that card. And I think when we talked about it, I'm trying to remember now, there was this like interesting thing about like the death guy, like on the horse. I'm trying to, are you knowing what I'm talking about or not really?
I might be. I don't know.
Okay. Anyways, that's where I'm going to start with like my initial impression. So go ahead, and I think you'll probably jog my memory here.
When I first saw it, I thought like how to hold it all a bit more lightly. I definitely saw the humor, and it seemed like the card to me was saying like, well, we're all going to die. So like, what's the big deal? If you publish it, don't publish it. If people like it, don't like it. Like, it's going to be over. You're going to run out of time to create at some point. So why take it so seriously? The reversal is a bit interesting, and maybe it is part of that like joking element to sort of turn it on its head. And I wrote down a quote that you said, because we talked about how death like marches onto this stage, and there's different people who are meeting the death figure in different ways. Like the child is trying to like, I think, reach out to it. The woman is sort of like fainting away. There's a king who's like already dead because he sort of thought he could, maybe he thought he was immortal, and death is like, you're out of here. And then there's the Pope, or the like religious figure, who has some spiritual relationship with death, and he's like still standing and trying to communicate with this figure. But you said something, I think you're the one who said this, but like all you can do is lay there bleeding and watch it go by.
Yes, that's actually what I was trying to remember. That was it. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like, once it comes for you, that's all you can really do. So if today is a day where you're not having to contend with that, it's like, what's the big deal to like figure out what you want to do with your creativity?
Yeah.
And I think that card or that response was also sort of suitable for your personality. Like you can appreciate dark humor. And I think I feel like someone on the other side, whoever was trying to send this message, definitely understands how to make you laugh.
That's true. And I mean, I hadn't thought of it this way before, but like it, I think can also mean like, who cares if you don't send it out? I mean, like maybe that's the hard thing too, but like that all of these kind of like decisions that feel so fraught and about like who we are as writers this month or this year and this decade of our lives. Yeah, they're all like framings to make us feel safe in our identity, when if there's anything that 2020 has taught us, it's that there is no identity safe from like upheaval. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what clarity that offers, but I think, just those shifting winds and kind of like being able to like enjoy them instead of like trying to create all these safe rules.
Yeah, and when you said, like who's expecting you to submit it except for yourself, so
Right.
It's really all generated within us. Like there's no one out at a literary magazine like waiting for me to get in their inbox, right? So it's like, do you enjoy it? Do you actually enjoy it? Do you want to share it with the world? What do you want to get out there? Kind of puts the question back on you. And given our mortality, what thing seems meaningful?
Yeah.
So your next question, how can you harness your drive to work and do well and compete, perhaps, without turning it on yourself? And for this one, you have the moon reversed, another reversal. So, the questions in this reading are a bit strategic, or the initiating questions of like how to manage a big pile of creative, juicy, raw material or completed, polished material, in fact, is a strategic one. It's a practical one. It's somewhat logistical. And the moon is very much unconcerned with sort of like death, unconcerned with logistics and strategy. The moon is really about the subconscious space and the like what we experience when we go to the dreamland, where things that we recognize are reconfigured. And so this idea of like harnessing your drive to do well without turning it on yourself, it's almost like this card again kind of scrambles the question. Like within the moon, there's not really timelines, there's not benchmarks, there's not like boxes to check necessarily. It doesn't make a lot of sense or logic. And I think that's kind of part of your creative process. Like you create differently. I have one of my best friends is an Aries, and like I'm a very orderly person. And I can do like some skills pretty well. And she, like you, is like very talented at like playing the saxophone, being in a band, being a cartoonist, being a singer, performer, a poet, all of these things. And it's so extensive. She's also less orderly than I am. So like if we travel together, her side of the room is very evident compared to mine. But I think I say that because it's like, that's representative also of her creative spark. Like I can't create in that way because I'm so contained, but she's so expansive that like all that room is really necessary. And within that expansive space, she can really venture into all these different disciplines, genres, and really like play and have fun. And that kind of reminds me of the moon. And I feel like I bring her up because you two are in Aries. You remind me of each other. I feel a very similar deep fondness for you and admiration. So yeah, it just seems to me like trying to find the rhyme or reason or the like code to figuring out when you're supposed to submit or how to do this or harness the drive and then decide what to do with it is sort of like you'll know because you live in the moonscape in a lot of ways and you see a signal and you do the thing that means to you.
Yeah. And maybe it's kind of an interesting counter with the like Aries, like fiery sort of sunniness, to trust that and to be able to kind of let a tidal logic be present. I was just thinking too that like in tennis it's really interesting because your racket, like when you hit, if you don't hit out in front, especially for like a driving approach shot, if you don't like kind of prepare early and hit it out in front of you, your racket feels really heavy and it feels like an exhausting motion. Whereas if you do the other thing, if you kind of go to meet the ball, then it feels effortless. And I just think about that all the time because you kind of have to be like in tune, not just with your kind of like idea of what kind of shot you want to have. You have to just like meet the ball where it wants to be hit. So that kind of reminds me of some of that mooniness too.
Yeah. And that space of the subconscious, like that, like there's the lunar cycle, which of course, is regular, like we can predict it. But it also has its own timeline. And I kind of think like the moon, seeing the moon in this spot in your reading is sort of like your projects have their own organic timeline. And it's kind of your job to listen to that and to meet them when they're ready to bounce back into the world in the same way you do with a tennis ball, perhaps. Okay. And then your third card, how can I honor my work regardless of the early outcome? And here you have the sun, no reversal whatsoever, a very Aries card as well. Or this card can be associated a little more with Leo, but also a very fiery, bright sign. And this one just seemed, or card, and this one just seemed pretty straightforward to me that your creativity, your work is an expression of who you are, of your soul's like radiantness, its radiance rather, and that's the thing really to stay true to. Like there's a lot for you to you're so contemplative, like you're always making these really beautiful associations between things like tennis and writing, or I know you read a lot of books about like Antidote that you're talking about that bring in all of these different theories, and you synthesize things like that in your work really beautifully that make you allow the reader to really look at a certain idea through a very specifically different lens. And that's always really exciting. And I think that's part of the light that you shine into the world. And I think that's the way to honor it, is like really noticing that it's a true expression of how you are and who you are. And that, these other things are sort of like insignificant, even though we give them a lot of meaning. The publication part or the timeline or the outcome is less important than the drive and the what you're channeling into your work in the first place.
I love that. Yeah, it kind of makes me think about a few weeks ago, Ali and I went into this bookstore in Minneapolis that's a really wonderful independent store. And as I've gone away from fiction writing a little, I've been more drawn to memoir and philosophy and psychology. And I've felt so bad about not craving novels the way I used to. And, but I just decided, like, whatever, like, this is like what I'm hungry for right now. And like, so bookstores have sometimes felt kind of agonizing because I've just felt like I was dragging this child to like an aisle that she didn't really care about. And then this time I just like let myself go to the aisles that were calling my name, and I had like a stack of books this big, and it was like just so nice to feel like where there's felt like parchedness, there was like a whole kind of oasis, once I allowed myself to just love what I love and know that that might change again. And
Yeah, and there's the child in this card, and I think that's where you just brought in your kind of inner child figure that's like asking, what does she want right now? Not like, what am I supposed to want? This is the expression of the self before all of the unfortunate socialization and culture, like when we feel free to play, free to be ourselves, free to want what we want, explore what we want, uninhibited. This is how you can honor your work. Very beautiful.
Man.
Tarot gets you every time. Has seeing this reading or seeing these cards show up for you? I also thought it was interesting, you and Alejandro, who is in another episode of Cosmic Rescue, you both got the moon reversed in your readings. And
I got that. Yeah,
I was wondering, did any, it's been a little while since we did this reading. Did anything kind of stay with you about it or shift anything for you?
I remember feeling like very reassured and energized by it. And then kind of like, this is how I think this often feels, whether it's like tarot or therapy, that it's like you get a few days from it and a week from it, and then it's sort of not as present unless you kind of like go back and look at it. And so I felt like there were percolating things in it. And actually maybe even like that bookstore thing happened, I think, in between us having that talk. So I'm going to just put that on you and tarot right there as like part of that experience. But like right now I feel just like so light again, kind of at that prospect of like, just like what you said about questions being scrambled is so awesome, because like sometimes when you're like, okay, how do I get this right? And then just being told like, there is no right, or like different question,
Right.
It's so nice to, just like put down this like heavy backpack that you thought you had to carry and kind of just proceed without it, trusting that like whatever supplies you need will appear on the way in a foragey way.
That makes me, I want to point out that the tarot cards will resist your questions when the questions are not fully appropriate to what you're trying to do, or the tarot can have a sense of humor with you. I really feel like the cards have a personality, or not, if not the cards, whatever may be communicating through them.
Yes.
So that's just another like surprising, wonderful element of using them, is that you'll be in a conversation with these pieces of paper, but they seem to be having a sense of humor with you, or sort of being like a wiser aunt or something, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not the question. Or like a big sister where it's like,
Yeah.
Try again. Please reformulate the question. Brittany, yeah, thank you so much for coming on Cosmic Rescue. It's such a great thing always to share space and time with Britney Sonnenberg, and you can find her. You can learn more about her at BritneySonnenberg.com. Brittany, you also published recently an essay in Texas Monthly. Can you just tell us a little bit about it real quick?
Yeah, it's an essay about a puppy that showed up in our lives under our neighbor's car, kind of early summer when the pandemic was still feeling new and crazy. And there's some tarot in it too, because it sort of showed up on the day that I pulled Queen of Wands, and it had this very wild kind of result. But basically it's in a way looking at when I'm training my dog and sort of her responses to that training that mimics when I tell her to sit and wait, the ways that quarantine restrictions have told us to sit and wait, and kind of with tarot and the question of lessons in general, how we can use instructions or guidance to kind of become more and more ourselves. Sort of same with Penny, my dog, and not just sort of bossing her around, but finding relationship. So yeah, it's about all that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect example of the kind of work you create, where you can interrogate the consciousness of your puppy, interrogate what lessons do for us, how they make us feel told, but how we can also open up to how they can change us in interesting ways that we actually have control over. So Brittany is an amazing writer, and you should absolutely follow her work. Check out her novel. We will be awaiting the memoir when its time has come. And thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you for this gift, Cecily. It's been so helpful.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll try the tarot spread that we just moved through with Brittany. You can try it on your own. It's a simple 3-card tarot spread. And just to review, the questions are, please show me something that can help me enjoy the game and hold it all a bit more lightly. So how can you embrace the creative and competitive part of your process while also not taking it way too seriously? Question 2, how can I harness my drive to work and to do well without turning it on myself, without putting additional unwanted pressure on you? And question 3, how can you honor your work regardless of the early outcome? So there's the creative values that you hold and that matter to you, and then there's another set of values that exist in the marketplace, and you want to make sure that you're focused on what matters to you first and foremost. So we'd love for you to try the spread. If you want to share anything that comes through as part of your spread in the comments, we'd love to hear from you, and we're happy to share feedback on any of the cards if you have questions. You can also find more of our services and offerings at typewritertarot.com. We offer workshops and classes. We, of course, do one-on-one tarot readings and relationship readings, whether you're in a romantic partnership, a friendship, a creative partnership. Tarot can be a really beautiful tool for navigating strengths and challenges between two people. And we also have a membership program where you can learn more about tarot and develop your own personal tarot practice in a way that feels natural and authentic to you. So find out more at our website, typewritertarot.com. You can find us on social media at typewritertarot. And we want to give a special thanks to the Magical Objects for our theme song, I'm Ready. And also thanks to Annar Verold, who edits this series for us. Thank you, Annar. We hope you have a beautiful week, whenever it is you're watching this. Have a great day. Have a great creative flurry following this, we hope. And we hope to see you soon.